I've been having a lot of difficulty trying to get things on film that require two hands, and so I'm going to try to do this video here as a short little after the fact. But I've got a vertical gardening barrel that I made out of a plastic 55-gallon drum. Basically what you do is you do the layout here. I got 3 inches here, and then a 5-inch opening that I cut in here with a skill saw, and then I heat this up with a torch and then shove a bottle in here in order to get the shape. And right now I'm planting some garlic that I started earlier in the season, and I started that with a like one of those salad containers that you get your salad in, that's plastic and clear, and cut some holes in the top so that the garlic bulbs would fit in there. Trim the tops of these off and set the whole bulb inside there to where it was touching the water. And I left a little bit of space in between the roots and the water so that you'd get some air to the roots. And I'm now transplanting these to this barrel. These were actually started in another container as well, but I need to use that other container, so I'm going to transplant these to the barrel since this has got garlic in it. I've already done some, so I'm going to make a hole here large enough for the bulb and go ahead and transplant that into there. And this barrel has got just some split firewood in the bottom of it in order to create a space, and then underneath that is a piece of this weed fabric like this right here. And the weed fabric also acts as a wick to work the moisture back up to the plants. And then on top of that, I put the lid that came off the top of the barrel on top of the wood, and then that was wrapped with another piece of weed barrier that goes to the all the way around the outside edges. And then I put some dirt in order to support that up against the outside of the frame so that the dirt doesn't go past and into where my drain system is. And the drain's basically just there to prevent overwatering. Since you've got a lot of plants that are all stacked up, it's difficult to determine whether or not you have too much water in there. So that's what that's for. And then on top of the first layer of dirt, there's a layer of wood chips that have been sitting out for a season. There's a lot of bark and stuff like that in there. And the reason I use those is because I'm trying to get the mycorrhizal fungi to grow in the soil. And so if it's already growing in the wood chips, it makes it easier to transfer it to your planting medium. And this particular experiment I'm doing without any potting soil. I'm just using all natural ingredients. I also put some rabbit manure in with the soil, and instead of mixing it all like some people do with their potting soils, I just simply did it in layers. And I figured that mixing would kind of occur later as I put earthworms in here to continue to aerate and to process and break down some of the bionutrients that are going to be introduced into the barrel. So let the earthworms be my little rototillers, and that kind of helps to keep some of the labor down, and it's also just basically trying to create a natural system. So some of these, since they didn't get filled up all the way, I've just been taking some dirt and filling these back up. Now I don't know how much settling I'm going to get in this container, so I may end up having to add more soil later, but for right now I think we'll have enough room in there for garlic bulbs to expand. So we're just gonna have to wait and see on that. Some people have been doing these tubes on top out of a piece of PVC pipe with holes drilled in it, and they put their compost down in the center of here. I just elected to do a wire frame, and then this is filled with rabbit manure, and then I'm going to put the earthworms in, and they can travel back and forth to get into that to help to break that down and spread that into the soil. So this is basically just an experiment, and I'm going to do several others with a little bit different systems. One of these I've developed with cloth around it to keep dirt from the outside from getting through the wire mesh. Since the hole size is fairly big, it allows for the earthworms to get in and out easily, but it also allows for the soil to percolate in there. The other idea I had was to take a piece of PVC pipe that I could put over the top of this, work down into the soil, and then this could be physically removed or just slid out of here, and then you can replace the compost in here, or just to add aeration into the soil. So the air really helps to keep this from getting anaerobic. You want a aerobic environment for breakdown, because the aerobic environment helps you to fix the ammonium nitrates into the soil. If you have an anaerobic situation, then the microbes that are breaking that down are gonna off-gas the ammonium nitrate and break it down into ammonia, and that's why you smell like ammonia gases coming off of any kind of a manure type of compost. So we're trying to eliminate that and to create the right biosphere here in order for this to break down and produce soil. Here's an example of one of the really fine root hairs, if I can get that to focus. They're coming off of the rootlets, and they're one single cell, and they extend this long little hair-like structure into the soil, and that's where the actual water absorption and mineral absorption takes place. And so ideally what you want to have is a symbiotic relationship in this soil between these root hairs and the soil itself. So you have the mycorrhizal fungi, which is growing off of the woody material that's in here as this is breaking down, and that is pulling the nutrients out of the soil and making that available for these root hairs to be able to absorb into your plant. So instead of doing potting soil, I'm trying to get the mycorrhizal fungi in order to function as the potting soil, in that it's basically breaking down and making soil and composting it at the same time that the plants are growing inside the barrel. So that's the goal. So I want to see if I can get that to take place, if I can get the right amount of air mixture and moisture content in the soil. I think I can get that down. So if you look at a pile of compost, sometimes as you turn this, you'll see what looks kind of like spider webs that are growing inside the soil. That's a mature growth of the mycorrhizal fungi. This had some in it earlier in the season, but since the cold that we had and the rain that we had recently, I'm not seeing as much of it in here as I was. But it doesn't mean that it's not in here. It's just not visible to me right now. Sometimes you can actually dig down into the ground and you'll see that fungi has actually it's actually extended down into the deep soil, and then when the conditions are right, that mycorrhizal fungi will come to the surface, and it'll erupt into mushrooms. And so if you have a spot that's got a lot of mushrooms, that's due to the mycorrhizal fungi producing to the point where it is ready to breed and produce spores. So it's kind of an interesting organism in that it's an essential part of the soil mix in order to help release the nutrients from the soil to the plants. One thing that we've done with modern farming techniques is we've, by tilling, we've eliminated that mycorrhizal growth and the organisms that live in the ground. If you take one handful of this soil, there's more living organisms in that handful of soil than there are people on the whole earth. So to give you an idea of the amount of life that's in that soil is just incredible. And so that's one thing that tilling and modern fertilizer techniques are destroying. And so I'm trying to bring this back on a small scale so that people who have maybe not a lot of space, and they want to be able to do some backyard gardening, maybe in the inner city. These barrels only take up about 4 square feet. They're fairly easy to find. It's basically just throwaway material. So these are some experiments that I'm doing to try to produce some sustainable growth methods that's easy enough for the average person to do. So that's the experiment, that's the goal, and we'll see where it goes. All right, here's an example of the fungus that we're looking for, and it's just growing there on the bottom side of the log. So this will spread and grow and reproduce. If I take a piece off of here and I transplant it, I will be transplanting this fungus to the new environment. Spores is just a way that the plant uses in order to transport itself further, usually by wind. For a long time they didn't know what caused fairy rings, and fairy rings are basically where you get some of this fungi growing in a certain area, and then it spreads out to about 1 meter to 3 meters, and then when it reaches that fullness of growth, it'll send all the shoots up at the tips, which are the mushrooms that end up growing in a large ring, and that's what produces the fairy rings for mushrooms.